Hello, and today we're going to be reviewing the Makita XBU03Z 18-volt brushless blower. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, first up we have the battery slot. The battery slot will work with any of Makita's 18-volt LXT lithium batteries, and overall it does a good job of, well, keeping the batteries right where it needs to be. I don't have any complaints about any sort of wiggling or jiggling. The battery feels nice and secure when you insert it, and I don't think it's going to fall out accidentally at all, so it gets a pass here. The weight distribution also is fairly decent. It is a little bit heavier towards the back, but it's not so much that you have to worry about the blower tilting up constantly or putting strain on your hand when you're using it. So overall it gets a pass here as well. And next up we have the air intake. Now the air intake does a good job at keeping your fingers and clothing from getting sucked into the turbine motor or the blower motor on the inside of the blower, but overall it doesn't do a very good job at preventing your clothing from getting sucked onto the vent and causing your blower to lose power. Overall, the vent design is decent, but I do think that there are better vent designs out there, and I think that this is an area of the blower that could be improved on in the future. It's not a huge deal, but it is something to keep in mind if you are wearing loose clothing while operating the blower. And next up we have sling points. There's a sling point in the front of the blower, directly in front of the handle, and another one directly behind the handle. And they offer great versatility on how you want to sling your blower. I'm very glad that Makita decided to include sling points, simply because there's a lot of tools on the market that do not include sling points that should include sling points. So overall this gets a pass from me. And next up we have the hanging hole on the bottom of the blower. There really isn't much to say other than the fact that you can use it to hang the blower up on a wall or on a hook or something, and it does its job very well. So overall I'm very happy with it, and so it gets a pass. And next up we have the handle. Now the handle on this particular tool is a fairly nice handle. It has a nice rubberized texture which will help keep your hands in place if your hands are wet, or if you're using the tool for long periods of time, it will keep your hands nice and comfortable. And overall it's large enough that if you need to wear gloves, you can wear gloves without having any issues with getting your hands around the handle. So at the end of the day, I think the handle gets a pass, and I don't really have any major complaints about it. So yeah, moving on. Okay, next up we have the trigger. The trigger on this particular blower is a variable speed trigger, and it provides very good definition between the higher speeds and the lower speeds. Overall the trigger is nice and secure. I don't really feel any wobble from side to side, and it does a good job of, well, being easy to pull in and being easy to release. And so at the end of the day, I don't really have any complaints about the trigger, and I think most people will be perfectly satisfied with just how well it works, so it gets a pass. And next up we have the speed control lever. The speed control lever is a way of, well, operating the blower at a set speed without having to hold the trigger. Basically how it works is you push the lever forward, and it in turn will gently depress the trigger and keep the blower running at that speed wherever you decide to leave it. Overall it is a very useful feature, and I am glad Makita included it, although I personally think it could maybe use a little bit of a redesign. And if you're older, you might have a little bit of trouble pushing it forward if you have any sort of arthritis in the hands. But at the end of the day, it's a very useful feature, and I'm glad they included it, and I really think this is another great feature of the blower. So yeah, moving on. And last but not least, we have the blower tube. The blower tube is a little under 17 inches long and about 4 inches wide. You have the option of using a additional purchase item at the end of the blower tube to make it a little bit longer and to spread out the air so it's more of a sweeper style blower. And quite frankly, it would have been nice if they had included that rather than charging you an extra $15 or $20 for the piece of plastic that probably costs a grand total of 25 cents to make. But that's another topic. Overall, the blower tube gets the job done, and I don't really have any major complaints. It seems to be fairly robust, and I don't think you're going to be breaking it too easily if you accidentally whack it against a tree or a fence or something. So quite frankly, I'm perfectly satisfied with the blower tube, other than the fact that there's some aftermarket accessories that they could have included for free that they didn't, which is kind of a pain. But I guess that's just the way things are going nowadays. Okay, without a battery, the blower weighs 2,154 grams, which is about 4.7 pounds. And with a 4 amp hour Makita battery, it weighs 2,717 grams, which is just shy of 6 pounds. Okay, let's talk about the blower in use. Overall, the blower in use is actually a very lightweight and easy to maneuver blower. I don't really have any complaints because it's easy to maneuver. It's got quite a bit of power considering that it's running off an 18-volt battery, and it does a good job at keeping the air speeds fast enough to actually move the debris when you are, well, trying to move the debris. I don't think it'll work all that great probably on wet leaves. I think you're going to need something more powerful, maybe a 40-volt or a gas blower. But when it comes to dry debris on dirt or on hard surfaces, it seems to do a fairly good job. And I don't think you're going to have much of an issue with dry leaves on grass either. But I don't really have a way of testing that where I live, since we don't have any trees that ever drop leaves where I live. So quite frankly, I'm fairly happy with just the overall performance of the blower. I will say the one area of the blower that I'm not too incredibly thrilled with would be the battery life, and that is to be expected considering how much air this blower is moving at the speeds that it is moving. An 18-volt battery that's a 4 amp hour battery is roughly half the size of a 40-volt battery that is a 4 amp hour battery. So quite frankly, if you're looking for something with a long runtime, this probably isn't going to be the best blower to be considering. But if you don't have to have a very long runtime and you just have a small property and you need something that will run for roughly about 10 minutes, this is a fairly decent blower. And yes, 10 minutes is about the battery life you can expect with a 4 amp hour battery. Right around the 10-minute mark, it starts to die, and at 11 minutes, it dies completely. So, at the end of the day, this is a good little blower for small jobs or jobs where you don't need to have a 40-volt system or a gas blower. But if you have a larger property, you probably will be disappointed with this particular blower. But with that being said, I don't really have any major complaints with this particular blower. So let's go ahead and recap with the pros and cons. And the first pro is 18 volt. 18 volt means that you'll be able to use your same power tool batteries in this particular blower that you would be using in your drill or circular saw or what have you. And if you want to adapt batteries over from another brand, you can do that via a third-party adapter. Just do this at your own risk. So yeah, 18 volt is a pro in my opinion. Power. Overall, this particular blower has quite a bit of power. It has a wind speed rating of 116 miles an hour and a volume of 459 CFM. So quite frankly, I do believe those stats are fairly accurate, and at the end of the day, this has quite a bit of power considering it's 18 volts. Speed lever. The speed lever on this particular blower is very useful for if you wanted to keep this at a certain speed or if you just don't want to have to pull that trigger constantly. So I would definitely consider this to be a pro. Sling mount. Well, actually, it's mounts. There are two sling points on this particular blower, and considering that it seems like a lot of blowers or tools on the market that should have sling mount points don't have them, I would definitely consider the fact that this has two a pro. Wall mount. The wall mount hole on the bottom of the tool is a very simple design. It's about the same kind of design that you'd find on the bottom of a power strip. One side of the hole is big, one side of the hole is small, and you simply put it over a nail or a screw or a hook or something, and it will hold the tool in place in a vertical position on your wall. So overall, I'm very happy with the overall design of the hole, and I'm glad that Makita decided to feature this on this tool. Weight. Overall, the weight of this particular tool is, well, it's a lightweight blower considering how much power it has. Coming in at under 6 pounds with a 4 amp hour battery, this tool is a great tool if you're older and just don't want to lug around a heavier 36 or 40 volt system or a gas blower. So quite frankly, the weight is definitely something that is going for this particular blower. Build quality. Overall, the build quality of this particular blower is very good. Makita definitely does a good job with just the overall feel of most of their tools, with the exception of the chucks on their newest generation of drills. But overall, the build quality on this particular blower is excellent, and I have to say that I'm perfectly satisfied with just how well it stands up to abuse. And the first mat is the extension tubes. The extension tubes, while this is capable of using them, you have to purchase them separately. I don't really feel like paying $25 in order to get both extension tube pieces when they really should have been just included with the blower. They probably cost about $1 to make, and I don't know. It's not really that big of a con. It's not really a pro. It's just kind of meh. And the first con is runtime. The runtime on this particular blower is about 10 minutes of usable power with about 1 additional minute of dying power, which isn't horrible considering that I'm using a 4 amp hour 18 volt battery and the amount of power that this blower has. So like I said earlier, it's not that big of a con. It just is something you need to keep in mind if you have a larger property. I would recommend either a different blower or purchasing additional batteries, but at the end of the day, it's going to be up to you. And last but not least, we have the air intake. The air intake does a good job at keeping stuff away from the blower motor, but it doesn't do a good job at preventing stuff from getting sucked onto the grill, such as loose clothing like jackets or baggy shorts. So quite frankly, this is an area of the blower that could use some improvement, and there are other blowers on the market that have better air intake designs, so this is something that could be improved on this particular blower. And that is it for the pros and cons. Final thoughts on this particular blower. Overall, this particular blower has a lot going for it. It's lightweight, it's got great build quality, it has quite a bit of power for an 18-volt blower, and quite frankly, it doesn't really have any major downsides with the exception of the runtime, but that's going to pretty much handicap any 18-volt blower, considering that, well, 18-volt batteries just don't exactly have the reputation for long-lasting endurance, at least not when you compare them against, say, a 36 or 40-volt battery. So, at the end of the day, I think this is a fantastic blower, and I think it has a fairly reasonable price, although the price could always be lower in my opinion. So if you're in the Makita system, or you don't mind adapting batteries over if you find one used somewhere, I would say that this is a decent blower to maybe take a look at, and I think it does a fairly good job. I'm very impressed with how lightweight it is, and it's very maneuverable, so I would recommend it to anybody in the Makita system or doesn't mind adapting batteries over at their own risk. And that is it for this particular video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. And just as a heads up, the amount of videos I'm putting out might go down a little bit simply because of inflation and time. So with that being said, we'll see you next time. God bless.